Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We're your hosts, Karan and Kristen. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
Today, we are chatting with Cody Ringle. Cody is the founder and head coach of Fortitude Strength, which uses a tailored approach to strength training. Cody is also an Enlifted Coach and is using his training with athletes and youth to help them create empowering life stories. Cody is leading by example as he guides people to write their own pirate codes. And we are excited to be chatting with you today.
Same. Thank you guys for having me.
Welcome. So, Cody, you are a leader and you've been charting your own course through your coaching. So we would love to hear what started you on your own pirate journey and brought you where you are today.
That's a loaded one, right? How far back do we want to go?
Good question.
Were you a cesarean birth or as far back as you want? We've got the time.
Yeah, exactly. So like many people, we all have our journey through youth. A lot of the things that I did growing up, I felt as though I was doing for someone else. I was living a life for someone else. A lot of the things that I've noticed, especially around men, is at those young ages, young men, young boys, we take a lot, and I imagine this is true for women as well. I can only speak, from my experience in this, but we take a lot of our cues and who we ought to be in this world from someone who's likely not the best judge of that, not the best person to help you navigate that journey. Let's put it that way. Whether it be our parents, whether it be, the teacher who's maybe been involved in the system for a little bit too long and they're a little embittered by it. I had my family, my parents, they were very blue collar, very Michigan is the motto of Michigan is the state that built the middle class. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's very blue collar, in my town, the town that I'm currently, which is only 5 minutes from the town that I grew up in. It's all about factory. There's a lot of factory, a lot of farms, a lot of hardworking people who want to get to Friday night. Mm-hmm. They want to relax over the weekend. And then, the dreaded Sunday comes and the best part of their life happens from 5 o'clock on Friday to midnight on Saturday. Mm-hmm. That was my parents for a long time. My mom worked, she herself worked 27 years in a hot dog factory and food production at that. It's like 35 degrees in there. Mm-hmm. And I worked there for a summer in college. And I got to see how that atmosphere really started to twist and contort people. Whether it was the atmosphere, whether it was the story they were telling themselves, whether, nature versus nurture, maybe a little of both in this regard. But I saw grown men, like 40-year-old men. I saw a 40-year-old man, 45-year-old man who was 6'2", 200 pounds. My mom worked the sanitation department. Her job was to pick up the food processing scraps, essentially, that were left over. It's a messy job, right? There's product that gets left behind in little bins besides everyone's workstation. I watched this grown man look my mother in the eyes and kick his bin over as she was going to pick it up. And in that moment, I didn't have the tools to articulate what I was seeing or how to confront that situation in a positive way. I remember the impression that left on me was, holy shit, how can this human being in this environment want to affect someone else who is I mean, my mom's 5'2", half the size of this human. And the best part of his day in that moment was to make someone else's day worse. That's a micro example of a macro problem in these small rural communities, is people have sold themselves a story that this life can only be so good. I have to do things to bring other people down to my level rather than trying to bring the aggregate whole up. If I'm having a bad day, it's my responsibility to make sure that you're also going to have a bad day. Growing up, I got to see, and that's one piece, right? That's one day. Now imagine this over 18 years, 20 years, right? The culture becomes, here's the bar. Don't you dare try to come up here. Because if you do, all the demons, the monsters, the hell is going to grab you by the ankles and it's going to pull you back down. And I've been really fascinated lately with the concept of monsters. Right. So looking at, like I told you guys, I did a little watching of that pirate documentary on Netflix. And Blackbeard was a great example. Right. He had that monster inside of him that manifested itself. Now, was that what do you have, syphilis? Was that right? Was it the syphilis, or was there already some kind of split personality things going on in there? Who knows? But there was a monster, right? And he figured out the healthiest way in that environment for him to feed that monster to bring the collective whole up. I'm noticing people in these small towns, they have all these monsters, right? Everyone, I believe, has a monster inside them. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. You know, whether it's a demon, a monster, a pirate, whatever, your inner pirate, for good or for bad. Most people haven't found a way to properly feed that monster, so they let it consume them and the world around them. The thing that I love about strength training is that it gives people who otherwise would not have the outlet an opportunity to feed their monster before it comes and destroys their home, their life. A lot of people look at strength training, they're like, oh, cool, man, you want a bigger muscle, right? Yeah, it can be a part of it. Hypertrophy, bodybuilding, all of those things. Most people who get involved very heavily in fitness, they're running from something. I've found, and not everybody, right? But a lot of people that I get the opportunities to work with in the beginning, they're trying to run away from the old person that they used to be. Maybe they just got out of a bad relationship. They're trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to pretend that the monster isn't real. It doesn't exist. I've found it more beneficial to acknowledge the monster, shake hands with it, and feed it when necessary. It's the Jordan Peterson, right? Confront the dragon in its lair before it comes to your village. That's why strength training is important. That's why lifting weights and exercising and using your body in a physical way. It doesn't matter if it's in the gym. You can figure this out. You can slap on a rucksack. You can go out, you can sweat, you can do burpees in your backyard. That's the kind of trouble I'm interested in. How do we bring everyone up through the expression of physical activity? Because like I said, growing up, you know, exercise and taking care of your body, that was not modeled well for me. What was, is that you have to sacrifice yourself. You have to sacrifice your hopes, your dreams to live a mediocre existence. And guess what? Because I'm making this sacrifice, all you motherfuckers are going to do that with me. Is it okay to swear on this podcast?
Yep.
Okay, good.
We're pirates that swear.
Okay, good. We're gonna get along beautifully. So that's been my introduction to, you know, to strength training. That's why this is my mission currently. You know, I don't know if I answered the question or if I sidestepped it. I guess you can tell me.
If it's your journey, it's your journey.
Yeah. I really like what you said about just the other side of strength training. So I work specifically mainly with women. About 90% of my clients are with women. And I work with a lot of women who have never done a fitness in their life. And teaching someone to deadlift is not hard. And what I see as a result of them realizing these the physical things that they can do and having this outlet is I see women going for promotions that they wouldn't have gone for necessarily before. I see women like taking a step, buying their own, like buying property. I just see them doing other things that they hadn't done previously. And we have the conversations that that it really is just a huge boost to their I don't want to say ego, but to their self-confidence of like realizing that they can do these hard things, and how that leads them to take on other hard things in their life as well. Have you noticed that kind of change as well when you talk about like feeding the monster and that kind of growth?
Absolutely. I mean, our mission is to help people develop self-confidence by developing strength, prioritizing nutrition, and fortifying their mindset. Mm-hmm. That self-confidence piece is huge. Mm-hmm. Right? This is one small thing. The people who show up most of the time, they're going to show up 5 days a week, and our sessions last an hour. So I'm getting them for 5 hours. That gives them 163 other hours for life to compound to all the things that they struggle with to manifest themselves and become greater and bigger and badder. That 1 hour that they're in here a day helps them realize, you know what, I've overcome this thing. Whatever this thing is for you, it could be weight, it could be a skill that you're trying to gain. It could be, that you can finally run for a 400 and you haven't done that in 20 years. I can overcome this thing. What else out there in the other 163 hours do I now have the courage to face? Right? Mm-hmm. Courage is an interesting word, right? Many people identify courage as just not being scared of something, mm-hmm. the lack of fear, when it's actually the opposite. Courage is noticing the fear and doing the thing anyway. So when you're talking about the females who are finally willing to ask for that promotion, maybe get out of that relationship that they know has been toxic for them, start taking care of their bodies mentally, physically, and emotionally, mm-hmm. they're developing that courage. How do we do that? We introduce them to micro doses of adversity in a controlled state. Mm-hmm. That's fitness, baby. That's the gym.
Yeah.
It's one of the best. It's not the best. It's one of the best vehicles that I've found. I'm sure, different strokes for different folks. This isn't going to work for everyone. Like acknowledged. Many people, like you had talked about, women especially, and that's interesting because our membership here is dominantly women. Mm-hmm. 60 to 70% of our membership is women. Yeah. I have my own thoughts as to why that might be, but they come in with a very low training age as well. Right? Mm-hmm. They've never done strength. They've never touched kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells. A lot of that comes from a culture. A culture in a town like this is that, well, you have a specific role to play, and that's not to be strong and dominant. Mm-hmm. And fuck that shit. Mm-hmm. Let's get you as strong as possible. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more attractive than somebody who carries themselves with confidence. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do we develop confidence?
Yeah. I grew up in Michigan on the other side of the hand. All
right.
So while it's not as much of the machine work, it was more farmland. I can understand there's that certain mentality to that. A lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people, because there's many small towns, tend to grow up and stay. So yeah. I'm curious, because you are working in Michigan and in a small town, there are certain mindsets that get set in place when you stay where you grew up too. So it is, you have a lot of people over there around you that have done language work. Is it coming easily where people are coming in like, oh, I really want more of this? Or has there been some resistance because of that small town, all those stories and the generations that have been in that place passing stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was in high school and college, I studied marketing. And one of kind of the philosophies that I came up with was that a town like Coldwater is 5 years behind somewhere like Chicago. And Chicago is 5 years behind the East or the West Coast, right? As far as the introduction into the market of new styles and new information. I've felt for a very long time that I'm trying to throw a community on my back and pull them in a direction that they may not want to go or may not be ready to go. And there are some people, right? The members of our gym, other members of the community, they're more open and receptive to new information like this. Most of the community, though, is not yet. So it's an uphill battle. And I imagine it's true everywhere. This is new. Anything new, right? Especially this language work in mass and at scale, anything new, there is a period of integration. Mm-hmm. We're very much in that.
And have you heard about the wolves in Yellowstone, the 7 wolves that were placed in Yellowstone? And then while they were reintroduced, and just putting 7 wolves there, the whole ecosystem changed over time. So when I think of places like your gym too, like you are coming in and you have a little community there in where you're getting to reintroduce or introduce something new, and you get to create the culture too. So while it may take time, like I'm excited to see what comes of that, because you have people around you too. So I'm excited. I want to see what happens.
So Cody's one of the 7 wolves?
Yeah.
The 7 wolves of Michigan.
Yeah. Michigan Wolverines.
One of the things that has been of greatest value, for me coming from a small town, 2 things. One, I got out for a while. I haven't always been here. I went to college at a university that had 20,000 people in it. This town has 12. So my college was larger than this town. Now, the first college that I went to had 1,200 people. I graduated with 87 kids in my high school class. So what I realized in that first bout in the university was that world was too small. It was very similar to the town I grew up in, where there was a certain ideology, there was a certain way of thinking. And, there were pockets and there were parts on the fringes, but the mass, most people thought a certain way. And the world got too small. So I was like, all right, what's this other thing like? Went to the bigger school, had the opportunity to get exposed to a lot of different thoughts. And now I can choose. I can choose what pocket, what kind of thought processes, ideology do I want to subscribe to in this moment? Where if you've been in a small town and you came up in a small town and you've never left a small town, that's a much more difficult road, because the opportunity simply doesn't exist in the same way, right? That was huge for me. The second thing that's been huge over the last handful of years, and maybe this was a byproduct of going away and coming back, is I've sought out people intentionally outside of this community to connect with. The Enlifted community, the active life community, because I understand that there is a ceiling on the amount of information that I know and can act on right now. The more I can get exposed to, the better I can craft my thoughts, my arguments. I can better articulate why we're doing the things that we're doing and why it is important. But to do that, I have to take in ideas that maybe I don't agree with. There's a lot of people in the Enlifted community who 5 years ago, I would have come at it from a very narrow point of view and be like, this is real woo-woo stuff, right? But I've been exposed to it. And now I'm like, oh shit, you know what? That makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's exposure. We don't, in a small, everybody gets in these little bubbles, right? And you create this kind of ecosystem, and it's difficult. Social media is a great example now, right? You can find 1,000 people who agree with you period.
Mm-hmm.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Now I'm fortified in my belief. So I've got 1,000 people at my back who are telling me that I'm right. Small communities, small towns are very similar to these bubbles and ecosystems that we create on social media, in that they can reaffirm whatever belief we hold, whether it's accurate or not, right? Because truth is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So exposure, get out, find people who come from different places, lived in different places, have different experiences. And now I don't have to be the guy who experiences all of these things, because I can have a conversation with you and I can learn something. I can take something away from this based on your experience.
Mm-hmm.
People who come from small towns seem to struggle with that. I don't know if they don't realize that it's so readily available to them, or more that they haven't had the reps. They haven't gotten the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can bring in people, I brought Mark England, Aaron Giannetti, and Brandon Powell to a workshop here in Coldwater, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
No one else is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go to that workshop.
It was dope. They're doing it again in Virginia.
Are they? When?
February, beginning of February. They're doing Resilience version 3.0.
Ooh. Better every time, I imagine. Getting in the reps.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Bermuda, and that is a very small island. There's no driving to the next state to experience anything. It's very, very small, and quite like narrow-minded. And I think one of the greatest gifts I've given myself was immigrating to Canada, and now I live in Vancouver, which is such a diverse city. There's all different cultures and ethnicities that I get to learn from and experience different, like you said, a variety of ways of just looking at life that really is so different from what a lot of my family experience, where, they live on this tiny rock and maybe they fly to New York for a shopping trip and back. So I totally understand what you say. People just get trapped. I know people that have never left Bermuda. I can't even imagine how narrow their view of the world must be to have never experienced anything outside of this 24 square mile rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about that small town, about getting out and having experiences, and you can go back, but go back with that knowledge and that experience that changes you and your vision for life, really.
Yeah. And, in all fairness, there's nothing wrong with people who never left.
Mm-hmm.
If that was a conscious choice, if that was a decision that they made for themselves. But going back to how we started this, I don't imagine that most people dream of staying in the space that they grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Life happens. They make these small decisions that stack up over time. And now all of a sudden I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
I never envisioned myself coming back here to this area. When I was in high school, our senior year in communications class, we had to give speeches to our class. My speech started with, I hope you guys got enough of me in high school because you'll never see me at a reunion. I never envisioned coming back here.
Mm-hmm.
I got out and then I started dating a girl, came back for a girl, ended up staying when my father got sick, bought a business, and I kept making these small decisions that stacked. And now I'm here. I'm not angry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But most people who, they stay in a place like this, I would imagine it's not a conscious choice. It's just because, well, that's just what my parents did. So very similar to the Bermuda, right? That's what my parents did. That's what the generations before me did. This is all that's available to me. We don't see the possibility. Yeah. It's a great big world out there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to grow up, and you have to be given the tools to understand that you are the captain of your ship, the master of your fate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
the small town, small area ideology doesn't feed that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm curious if you had a similar experience when you were leaving and going away for school. If you had that reaction from people in your town of like, oh, you'll be back, you'll fail and you'll be back. I wonder if that was something that I dealt with, and I was surprised that people would have that attitude. And I'm wondering if you experienced that as well.
Well, the first time I got out, I was 19. I actually dropped out of college. I dropped out of college in between sophomore and junior year to move to Oklahoma to live with a girl that I met with on spring break.
I'm sensing a theme.
Yeah.
Dude, I was a romantic. Right? So made that decision. Long story short, that didn't work out. And one of the first calls that I made was to a family member who still lived in this area. And the thing that he said to me was, you proved that you can do it. Now come back home. The next day, I had all my shit packed up and I came back home. I would imagine that the people who want to pull you back or don't want to believe in you or want to throw you like up, she'll be back. They're doing it to stay comfortable with their own decisions of never taking a chance on themselves. Because if you leave and I stay, but I wanted to go, you showed me that my life could be better, and it's not because of the decision that I made. Now I have to confront that monster, right? I have to confront that in the mirror. I got to look at myself, and now it's just one more thing to tell me how I could have been or could have, would have, should. I could have had this different life. I gave up on my dreams. Maybe if I would have had a little more fortitude, if I would have tried a little harder, I could have had this thing. It was available to me, but I didn't have the balls. I didn't have the courage. I didn't have whatever it is. I didn't have I wasn't pirate enough to actually take that chance. So now, rather than be honest about that and authentic about that within my soul, I'm going to look at you and be like, she'll be back. No one leaves this place.
So with all of that, I mean, you've touched on some of them, but what are some of the bold actions that you've taken to get you to where you are today? Other than following girls.
It was all vehicles, right? It was all a catalyst for the decisions. The biggest, so I really do believe that most of us, we need a heaven to run towards and a hell to run from. It's valuable to have both. If we're only looking at the possibility and we're never looking at the possible prison stay or the potential hell that might come from staying in this current situation, how bad could it be? We're going to be more likely to stick with the hell that we know rather than the potential heaven that is slightly uncertain because of that certainty, right? For me, one of the biggest actions that I took came in 2017, the end of 2016, early 2017. So I had owned my gym for almost 2 years at this point. I bought it in 2015, and I had been a part-time gym owner, right? With the old, once the gym starts making money, then I'll take the leap and I'll go into this thing full-time. In reality, if you want the thing to make money, you got to, like, this is why I struggle with side hustles, right? Your side hustle, your plan B takes away from plan A. That side hustle, what effort and energy are you giving to that could be done with this thing? In December of 2016, so December 18th, actually, which is coming up in just a couple of days now. What is today? The 15th for us?
Yeah.
So 3 days away at the time that we're recording this. December 18th of 2016, not to keep going back to the girl, but I'm dating a girl about an hour away. We get in a fight. I'm driving back to my home. My father was over at my house and he was staying at my house dog sitting. He lived out in the sticks, didn't have cable, very country, hard water. So coming in and staying at a house in town That was like a vacation, like staying at a hotel.
Mhm.
So he came in, dog sat for me while I went to see this girl for the night. We get in a fight. I'm driving back. I shoot my dad a text. No answer. Totally understandable. It's about 10 o'clock. About 10 o'clock in the morning. He's probably sleeping in. Maybe he's in the shower. Get back home, knock on the front door. The door's locked. The door's locked. I had given him my keys. That way he could come in and out as he wanted to. Totally understandable. He's definitely in the shower. Right? I go in through the garage. I open the kitchen door. And at the time, the kitchen ran this way, and there's a doorway, an open doorway to the living room right next to me. So I walk in, I turn to my left, and I see my father on the couch. My father's on the couch. He's still reclined back. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, I'm home." No response. I'm paying a little bit of attention. I start to notice things. His mouth's a little bit open. He's got one eye a little bit open. He's blue behind the ear. Dad, built to a fever pitch. Eventually called 911. They're like, "Get him on the floor." Start doing chest compressions. So I grab him by the ankle, pull him off of the couch, get him onto the floor, start with the chest compressions. The ambulance show up, firemen show up, get me off of him. He had been dead for a while. They eventually came in. He's been gone for a few hours. My father had a ton of dreams that were left unfulfilled. Often we'd have conversations about, he went to school to be a mechanic, dropped out with, a semester left when he ended up getting pregnant, or my mom got pregnant rather. Always talked about going back. Also always complained about the job that he had. It was never enough money. He was working too hard. Life could have been better for him if only he would have made these choices. Mm-hmm. And he had the opportunity to go back and do it all again, right? He could have stopped at any point in time, gone back to school, but he made the decision not to. He had sold himself the story that this is as good as it gets. So when he died at 59, I was 26, 27. And if his life was any indication of my potential future, I was already halfway to my own demise. I was working a job that I fucking hated. I worked in a trailer factory. I sat in front of a computer all day long, designing RVs on a laptop. I made good money. I had all the benefits. I worked pretty decent hours. I had all the things in this column that could have told me just stay right where you're at. It's pretty, you have comfortability, you have stability here. This other thing, it'll take off. Maybe. And if it doesn't, you still got this to fall back on. Or there's this thing over here that you're really passionate about. It sets you on fire. It wakes you up at 5 a.m. because you want to do it, not because you got to get up and drive an hour to make money doing a thing that you hate. It was 6 months after my father passed away that I declared and went full-time at the gym. That tragedy, his death, was the catalyst for me to take the boldest action of my adult life. Mm-hmm. To quit a really secure $65,000 job with a 401k, all the benefits and insurance, working maybe 40 hours a week, which rural community, rural town in Coldwater, Michigan, that's a pretty good living for a single 25-year-old, 26-year-old guy. To take a chance on something that at the time was paying me nothing. I was putting money into. The first 6 months of my full-time ownership in this facility, I made $11,000. And that was only because I had to take money out to pay the rent and to put food on the table. Without that, I don't know that I would have ever, it was the last greatest gift that my father gave me. He gave me the reminder of, memento mori. That's something that I think about a lot. Remember that you too will die. Mm-hmm. Right? Remember your death, contemplate it. I learned that, oh shit, if I stay here, I'm going to wake up 40 years from now, 30 years from now, and I'm going to feel just like my father did. this life could have been better if only I had the balls to take some action.
Yeah. Have you read the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying?
I have not, but I know that the number one, I believe that I know what the first one is. I've seen all like the memes, right?
Mm-hmm. It's one we've recommended before on this podcast, and I highly recommend it. Because it was a lady, she was a musician and an artist, and she supplemented her income doing home care for people that for hospice. And she put together the top 5 regrets that she got from people that she worked with that were on their deathbeds. And there's so many consistencies with things that we regret not making for ourselves, that we live for other people's lives and expectations, or for not pursuing happiness and joy, and all of these things that really resonate with what your story was with your father. It takes these tragic moments for us to realize and have our own kind of realization about our own lives. And if someone can maybe read other people's regrets and not have to live through a tragedy before they make the changes to their lives and to live their life that they want, then that's why I always recommend this book. It's very, very well written.
Oh, go ahead, Cody.
Well, no, it's always the things that we don't like. From my understanding, it's things that we don't do that we regret more than the things that we do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the chances we don't take.
Yeah, and really, the only certainty in life is that we're all going to die. So let's make the most of this life. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd rather enjoy my life as I'm living it than get to the end of my life and wish I had enjoyed it. So
that's all interesting, right? Like the hoping that people will learn from your experience or the experience of someone else and make a different decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One of the ones that we notice in the strength and conditioning, the fitness space, is the people who go to the doctor and the doctor tells them you got to get your shit together or you're going to go on medication, right? Or you're going to, your health is declining. You need to lose some weight. You need to start eating well. You need to start training your body or you're going to lose mobility. It also presents an interesting conundrum for some people, right? Because what that really is, I can tell the person who's actually ready to make the change when they come into the gym based on how they frame that thing, right? It's either my doctor tells me I need to ... or I'm ready to make a change. Mm-hmm. So if my doctor tells me, and that's the story, right? That's what I'm using to catalyze me to get moving. It might work for a week or two. Mm-hmm. Those people drop off. And the whole, using someone else's experience and hoping for that. Yeah, I hope that thing happens too. And it has to be a decision that you make for you. Mm-hmm. Because I can tell you all day long till I'm blue in the face, right? Take a chance on yourself. You're going to be much more happy. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. Yeah, there's a lot of sleepless nights, but I wouldn't imagine a life living anything else. And until you say, I'm doing this for me rather than Cody wants me to, mm-hmm. you're not going to have the wherewithal. You're not going to have the fortitude to follow through. Mm-hmm. Because it's tremendously difficult. Anything that you want to change, especially as you get older. I mean, I find it difficult to imagine trying to make a change that I had made if I was 50 years old and I had a wife and kids and I'd built up this entire life that now I had to potentially, I would have to worry about compromising to make the change that I wanted to make. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you all day, and we can say it all day, and people on their deathbed can say it all day. Live your life. Do the things that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And until you decide that you have to do this, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it's just not going to stick.
Yeah.
I've tried. That's the plight of the novice coach, right? Early in my coaching career, trying to do things for other people. right? Like you want to make it as easy as possible for your clients, and you want to give them every single step. And if you would just listen to me, that's just not what it's about.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, dude, if you can figure that out, that's the $1 million secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that change starts from within, and it's needing to realize that the only person coming to save you is you yourself, because once you realize that there's no night coming in to rescue for you from your life, and that you're the one that gets to decide what it's going to look like. Yeah, that change starts from within, and it's that taking that first step of acknowledging I'm the reason why my life looks this way, not X, Y, and Z out there outside of me. It was me and the choices that I made.
Yeah, it's not your mom, it's not your dad, it's not your spouse, it's not your kids. That's an interesting one, right? Like, if you got somebody who wants to make a change to create a better life, and their story is that if only it wasn't for my kids' schedule, I could do this. Man, what kind of relationship are you creating in your own imagination with your children?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Your life could be better if only it wasn't for your damn kids.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I bet you're not going to unload a lot of trauma onto them as they grow up.
Zero.
Nah. I bet there's not a lot of things that were never their fault that it's about to be all their fault.
Oh,
So,
I just thought of that. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's for real, man. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if it's everyone else's fault, not only do you not have any power to change, but what kind of relationship are you creating with those people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, going back to the monster thing and the stories thing, and it's on you to understand that you are the hero of your story. It doesn't mean you're going to be the hero of everybody's story.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're definitely not the main character. If you position yourself as the victim of your own story, and then the victim in someone else's story, what does that make them? If I can't do the things that I want to do because of you, does that make you the good guy or the bad guy?
Yeah, the villain.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you the villain, right? So now, not only am I not the hero of my own story, I'm the victim of yours.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, let's pretend that everything's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
If that was a book, I would not read it. So trying to imagine if somebody wrote that story. I mean, there could be somebody that wrote that story, and I'm guessing it's not known because how many people wanted to read it?
Consciously or unconsciously, that's a story that I imagine a lot of people are writing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Whether they're, many people are passive participants in their own existence.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot, man, to look at it and be like, you know what? This is all my fault. It's that old, like the meme that's been going around, right? Where the guy's looking in the mirror and he says, finally, I've found the person responsible for all my problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's the faces. It's the, there's that old Japanese, the saying, right? Everyone has three faces. There's the face that we show our friends, the face that we show strangers or the world, and then finally the face that we show no one, who is our true self.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen? Let's just hypothetically, what happens if you decide, and I'm going to say, fuck the face that I show the world, right? And I'm going to authentically show up with the people that I care about by showing them who I really am. A lot of the reasons that past relationships that I've had so many of those girls cycle through is because when those relationships started, I came into them with this facade of this person that I thought I needed to be in their story, rather than the person that I wanted to be in my own. I let people define who I was. I said, growing up and playing sports and stuff, I was perceived as cocky. I took that cockiness and I created this persona of arrogance. This became a shield. Now I didn't have to let you get too close. I got to protect myself and damage myself at the same time, because I didn't want to be that guy. It would be 2-3 months into every relationship that things would start to fall apart, because you're done with kind of the honeymoon, like, all right, here's the fake me. You're stuck with me now. So now you get to see who I really am. And then you meet that real person for the first time. You see that third face. You're like, oh shit. So everything we've built up to this point was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Ruh-roh.
Mm-hmm.
You take that into those relationships, and now you got a foundation built on sand.
Mm-hmm.
Many people in that instance go, well, I guess this is as good as it gets. So they weather that storm. They just stick with it. They end up becoming this manifestation that they created in their imagination of who they needed to be. It's the old, the thoughts beget the actions, right? I become who I thought that you thought I was, just because I didn't want to let go of this relationship. Going back to the females, who finally find their confidence. If I'm letting someone else define who I am in my own story, I got a pretty good idea of where your level of confidence is at.
Mm-hmm. What do you think good trouble is, and how are you going about creating good trouble in the world?
I'll speak locally, then globally.
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe that in the beginning, this good trouble, these things we want to create, need to be selfish. Mm-hmm. It's the old selfish with consideration. Mm-hmm. If you're not taking care of you, like, that's where most people get involved in this space, right? The coaching space. They want to help people. They want to bring everything up. You can't give from the empty cup. You're not taking care of yourself first. If you don't define what success looks like to you, if you don't define what you need out of your life, your relationships, your own existence, it's going to be very difficult for you to adequately give to someone else. Mm-hmm. So I define what success looks like for me selfishly. What do I need? How am I going to be able to become the best version of myself so that I can give more to other people? Then, who's your crew? Who's the people? Who's the people who want to hear your message? They're ready for it. They want to stick with you. Build them up. Why I love coaching, why I love owning a facility so much is that I get to mentor and I get to create the next group of people who are going to make the impact. Mm. If I myself can, if I can influence 120, what is it, Dunbar's number, 125 people.
Yeah.
If I'm the coach, right? That's the people that you can know and you can memorize, mm-hmm. right? Between 150 people or less. Mm-hmm. But there's the old adage that, each person impacts 125 people. So if that's true, and I'm just coaching clients, I'm able to impact 125 clients. But if I'm coaching 5 coaches who can each influence 125 people, my impact grows exponentially. Mm-hmm. So if I can cultivate the community and the staff and the coaches who understand, the language game, they understand the power of words. They understand why strength training is more about the life that you lead outside of the gym than the 5 hours a week that you're inside of it. then we can start moving this ship forward. We get to raise the whole thing rather than me selfishly and solely being like, you know what? I'm only going to focus on the impact that I can make on an individual. When I started, that was it. That was cool. That was fun. It was fine. But as you grow, you evolve. You have to be willing to redefine success. Success now looks like coaching coaches. So the good trouble we're creating, we're helping people find their strength. If I can start in a small community like this, my hope is that every person that I interact with in the gym and every coach that I interact with changes the life of, or imparts wisdom, gives something to 125 more people. And then by the time this thing's all said and done, we're scaling into millions.
Speaking of, I want to hear a little about your crew, your wolves, your pirates over there. Because I like to reach out to people that start following us on Instagram and do the Mark Englund thing and send a voice message. And I think at least 3 people I've talked to at minimum have said they were there because you mentioned our podcast and they're listening to it now. So I want to hear, I'm going to give a shout out to your crew, and thanks also for the listeners. I want to hear about them.
Yeah. So, our coaching staff is one of the hardest working at both gyms. They're the hardest working group of individuals that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing personally and professionally. And they give a shit about people. There's a lot of people in this fitness space who they want to scale the size of their impact rather than the depth of it. I've got three coaches out of the 5, including myself, who have gone through the Enlifted level 1. And it was not because I told them that they should. They made the decision for themselves. They saw the value in the tools that they were going to be able to get personally and professionally, and how they could integrate that into coaching more people and helping them rewrite their stories and understand how they're creating their own lives. I believe that one of the other ones is probably my girlfriend. So she by proxy gets to listen to a lot of the things that I listen to. But if we're gonna raise this whole thing up, if we're gonna bring the whole thing up, it's got to be an effort that we're all moving in the same direction together. Old PJ Fleck, who used to be the football coach at Western Michigan University, had called row the boat. Right? Everybody on the boat needs to be rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, you're going this way, I'm going this way, she's going that way, he's going that way. And we're going to be stuck in some sort of little tailspin. So if we decide what's the direction, how are we going to get there? What are the tools? What are the things that we need to do? We can all move that way together. Mm-hmm. Communication is the linchpin of our organization, of the thing going in the direction we need. If we don't communicate well, I don't know where I'm failing. If I have a staff who is only interested in blowing smoke up my ass and telling me how awesome I am and how awesome everything's going, I don't have any idea how we can improve. Thankfully, I do not. I got a staff who's very willing to let me know where I could improve and do better. Mm-hmm. We built that into the culture.
You wrote a code.
Yep.
Bringing it back to the pirate lingo.
Got it.
Yeah. Do you have any programs or workshops going on that you want to share with our listeners?
The biggest one coming up is Brandon Powell is going to come back here in February. So February 26th, Brandon Powell is going to come host a Wim Hof breath work and ice exposure workshop. That'll be a lot of fun.
Nice. That will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Coach Cody Ringle on Instagram is the easiest way.
Perfect.
Nice and
How-
easy.
How would you recommend our listeners go about starting their own pirate life? What advice can you give?
What's the thing that you've been thinking about doing? You've probably been thinking about doing this for a while, and you keep talking yourself out of it. Go fucking do that. Big, small, take some sort. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be starting a new business. It might be just painting. Something that you think is going to bring you joy, create a better life for yourself, learning something, having that conversation, with a family member that has been estranged. Most people know what they need to do. They want someone else to give them permission to do it. This is that. Go.
Yeah. Don't wait. Stop waiting for permission and take it. So our last important question. Do you know any pirate jokes? Or would you like to hear one? Those are your two choices.
I'd like to hear one.
Okay. We should start framing it like that. Do you know one, or would you like to hear one? Okay, where am I looking? Apparently I have two jokes on here. One of them we've already heard. Why don't pirates like traveling on mountain roads? Scurvy.
That's
Nice and
terrible.
cheesy, isn't it? The other one we'd already heard.
The old pirate dad jokes.
Yeah, our favorite kind. Awesome. Well, it's been so great having you on, Cody, and chatting with you. And thank you for sharing your story and your advice with our listeners, and for bringing us more listeners, because that's awesome too.
Same, guys. I appreciate you very much. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for chatting.
It's rock and roll, guys. There are no rules. This one goes to 11.